Good morning, Battleborn. We're coming through loud and clear.
Yes, you are. Thank you. We can hear you.
Fantastic. And just the meeting is being recorded. We have thumbs up. So with that, it is 9:01 a.m. on October 20th, and I would like to call this meeting to order, the Nevada Department of Education Regulation Workshop. I will note, just for the public and those watching, that agenda item number 5, the workshop to solicit comments on proposed changes to NAC 388D regarding private schools and scholarship granting organizations, will not be heard today. It will be postponed to the next meeting. The support material has canceled written on it on the website. So just as a courtesy, letting you know that that agenda item will not be heard today. Moving to agenda item number 2, our first period of public comment. We will take public comment during this agenda item regarding any item that appears on the agenda. No action may be taken on a matter discussed under this item until the matter is included on an agenda as an item on which action may be taken. We will impose a time limit of 3 minutes. Please hold comments specific to a given workshop until public comment is called upon for that workshop specifically. So if you are new here, when we open up an agenda item, let's say number 3 for a particular workshop, we will hear a presentation from the Department of Education, and then open up a period of public comment following the department's presentation, and then close that agenda item. So you will have an opportunity to make comment under specific workshop agenda items. So with that, is there any public comment here in Las Vegas for any matter on the agenda today? Seeing none, is there any public comment in Carson City under public comment period number 1 on any matter on the agenda?
Not at this time.
None at this time.
There is written comment.
Mindy, is there written comment submitted? Yep, we've got it. Lisa, you have written comment submitted under public comment period number 1.
Yes, I do. This is from Alexandra Andres. My name is Alexandra Andres, and I've been a resident of Las Vegas, Nevada for nearly 30 years. I work professionally in the state as a licensed master social worker and am currently pursuing my law degree from William S. Richardson School of Law at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. As part of my legal studies, I'm exploring the area of administrative law and have a particular interest in the Department of Education's proposed changes to Nevada Administrative Code 388, which addresses plans to respond to crisis, emergency, or suicide. Although I submit this comment based on my general life experience and as a law student, and not as in my professional capacity as a social worker, my experience working with vulnerable individuals and persons who have experienced significant trauma has charged my interest in this subject. The proposed amendment to NAC Chapter 388, which require the department to identify best practices in the event of needing to respond to a crisis, emergency, or suicide, address an important issue that can have a huge impact on a person's life, including that of a child. However, I wonder how the department plans to identify best practices. Which sources or experts will it reference, and how will these references be identified? I am curious also how the department intends to address nuanced differences between different time of emergencies, as the response to an active shooter situation will likely differ significantly from the response to a suicidal crisis. I appreciate that the department identified parents and guardians as stakeholders with whom it will consult should a national model not be identified, and one would need to be created, as parents have fundamental right to be involved in decisions affecting their children's in-school settings. I am appreciative that the department acknowledged their role in this process. The proposed amendments to NAC Chapter 388 would benefit from greater detail and nuance. While this is a strong starting point, I believe the chapter requires more comprehensive information, including how response plans will be tailored to specific types of emergency. Thank you for the opportunity to submit a written comment on the proposed regulations. Your considerations on these matters and solutions is sincerely appreciated.
Thank you. Any further written public comment submitted
There is no additional written comment at this time.
Thank you. That will close agenda item number 2, public comment period number 1. It is 9:06 a.m. and I'd like to open the workshop to solicit comments on proposed changes to Nevada Administrative Code, Chapter 388, regarding model plans to respond to crisis, emergency, or suicide. Director Battle, I invite you to walk us through the proposed changes that seek to provide guidance on the development of model plans for the management of crisis, emergency, or suicide.
Thank you. Good morning, Lanisha Battle for the record. This is LCB file number R13520 from September of 2020. Existing law requires a development committee established by the Board of Trustees of a school district or the governing body of a charter school to develop a plan to be used by the schools within a school district or the charter school, respectively, in responding to a crisis, emergency, or suicide. NRS 388.243. Existing law similarly requires a development committee established by the governing body of a private school to develop such a plan. NRS 394.1687. Existing law requires the Department of Education to develop a model plan for responding to a crisis, emergency, or suicide. NRS 388.253, this regulation requires the department to identify nationally accepted best practices, models, or frameworks that address the contents of the model plan. In Section 1, Chapter 388 of NAC is hereby amended by adding thereto a new section to read as follows. 1. When developing a model plan for the management of a crisis, emergency, or suicide pursuant to NRS 388.253, the department shall, to the extent possible, identify nationally accepted best practices, models, or frameworks for addressing the provisions of NRS 388.253. If such a nationally accepted best practice model or framework cannot be identified, the department shall consult with relevant stakeholders to develop an appropriate best practice model or framework for use by the Board of Trustees of a school district, governing body of a charter school, or governing body of a private school for addressing the provisions of NRS 388.253. Relevant stakeholders may include, without limitation, A, other state agencies, including without limitation those identified in subsection 1 of NRS 388.253. B, governing bodies of charter schools or private schools in this state. C, educational personnel employed in a public or private school in this state. D, local associations and organizations of parents and legal guardians whose children are enrolled in a public or private school in this state. Or E, parents and legal guardians whose children are enrolled in a public or private school in this state. 2, except as otherwise provided in NRS 388.259, 388.261, 394.1698, and 394.1699, a best practice model or framework identified or developed pursuant to subsection 1 must be presented to the state board and posted on the internet website maintained by the department. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Battle. Just a quick question. Looking at the date that this file 13520 is back in 2020, I'm assuming that these regulations have been through workshop before. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And the language that you have today is responsive to the feedback and comments that you received back in 2020-ish.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, I'd like to open a period of public comment under agenda item number 3, the workshop on proposed changes to NAC regarding model plans to respond to crisis. Is there any public comment here in Las Vegas? I see none. Is there any public comment in Carson City on agenda item number 3?
Not at this time.
Is there, other than, it is noted that the public comment written under under agenda item number 2 is relevant for this agenda item number 3. Is there any further public comment submitted online?
There is no further written public comment at this time.
Okay. Thank you, Director Battle. The time is 9:11, and I will close the workshop to solicit comments on model plans, agenda item number 3. Moving on, it's 9:11. I'd like to, open the agenda item number 4, the workshop to solicit comments on proposed changes to NAC regarding the definition of vulnerable and historically underserved populations for early childhood funding. Invite Director Mitchell to the table to discuss the proposed changes that seek to define vulnerable and historically underserved population strictly for the purposes of funding under Nevada Ready Pre-K and Early Childhood Literacy and Readiness programs. Director Mitchell.
Thank you, Michael Mitchell, for the record. The Nevada Ready Pre-K program has an eligibility criteria which was expanded in the last legislative session. One of the new criteria includes the definition that those who are members of vulnerable and historically underserved populations are eligible for Nevada Ready Pre-K. However, that term can be defined differently across programs, across grants, and so we propose to have a regulation to have a uniform definition so that is applied consistently throughout the state. The Office of Early Learning and Development has reached out to interested parties and current subgrantees to get feedback considering what that definition could look like. An example of a definition that the Office of Early Learning and Development could use for these NRPK and ESILP grants includes those who are members of vulnerable and historically underserved populations, which includes children living in rural, frontier, remote, or tribal areas, children in foster care, kinship care, or with a parent that is incarcerated, children experiencing homelessness as defined by McKinney-Vento Act, children who live in zip codes with exclusively 1- and/or 2-star rated elementary schools, children from families with asylum or refugee status, and children living in a single-parent household. Although that is an example, a uniform definition as such would allow school districts and community-based organizations throughout the state to apply the same framework to the eligibility criteria, ensuring consistency throughout the state.
Thank you, Director Mitchell. You under the suggested language A, you had mentioned rural or frontier.
Yes.
Is that a specific addition to what's been submitted here? Is frontier?
Yes. So all of these would be, a specific addition to that.
Okay.
And we would follow the state demographers to define that. Even rural areas can be defined differently. So we added frontier because on the state demographer's website, some counties are noted as rural and some as frontier. We don't want to have any kind of confusion. Either of those locations would be considered part of the eligibility criteria for students.
Perfect. And can you just clarify again the definition that is being proposed today? It's my understanding this is strictly for funding purposes or eligibility criteria for funding for the Nevada Ready Pre-K and the Early Childhood Literacy and Readiness programs.
Yes, exactly. That's correct.
So this definition would not apply outside of that particular application, just here.
Yes, just this application, specific to eligibility criteria for 4-year-olds entering pre-K.
Fantastic. Thank you, Director Mitchell. With that, I'd like to open up a period of public comment under agenda item number 4. And at some point this morning, my mouth will wake up and I'll speak. Let's see here. Under agenda item number 4, public comment to solicit comments on proposed changes regarding the definition of vulnerable and historically underserved populations for Nevada early childhood funding. We'll begin here in Las Vegas. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none. Any public comment in Carson City for this item?
None at this time.
Thank you. Any submitted comment online for this item?
There are no written comments at this time.
Thank you, Director Mitchell. You are relieved. I will close agenda item number 4, this workshop at 9:15.
Actually, hang on just a second. We may have public comment in Carson City. I apologize.
No problem.
Okay, so I just.
Oh,
I'm
one
curious.
second. One second. I'm going to open the public comment back up. I apologize to Carson City. So this is public comment in Carson City under agenda item number 4. And please identify yourself when you open up your public comment.
Okay, Susan Jansen, trustee, Douglas County. So I have more of a question. Although I want everybody to be taken care of course, does this fall under the umbrella of DEI? That's what I'm concerned about, since we're kind of moving away from that.
We almost made all of that. If you wouldn't mind maybe pushing the microphone a little bit further, trustee, if you wouldn't mind speaking a little bit more loudly towards the mic, that'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Do I need to start with my name?
Yes.
Okay, Susan Jansen, Douglas County, school board trustee. Although we want to serve every student in the state, of course, especially people who are struggling, I'm concerned that some of the wording might fall under the umbrella of DEI, which the state and the nation are moving away from. If I could get some clarification on that, please.
Thank you, Trustee Jansen, for your comments. We need to identify characteristics of students that would meet the definition of historically underserved population. And so A through F here, in working with, correct me if I'm wrong, Director Mitchell, but stakeholders across the state have identified students with these characteristics as fitting the definition of historically underserved. Is that accurate, Director Mitchell?
Michael Mitchell, for the record, yes, that's accurate. And we did a survey of program leads, directors, and basically took the most common responses and pulled those in to create the definition.
Thank you, Director Mitchell. Steve Canberro. This is principally around access to high quality early learning settings. Is that accurate?
Michael Mitchell, for the record, yes, exactly.
Okay. And then the populations of students here typically are, in the past, have students in frontier rural communities, foster care, homeless students. Have they been preferenced or prioritized in the past in the early learning?
Not in Nevada Ready Pre-K, but these are populations that would be less likely to have access to high quality care.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Any further public comment in Carson City? Seeing none. Okay. None? Okay. Thank you very much, Director Mitchell. It is 9:19. Appreciate the public comment. It is 9:19. I will close agenda item number 4. The workshop to solicit comments on identifying vulnerable and historically underserved populations specific to early childhood funding. With that, it is 9:19. I am going to open the agenda item number 6. As previously mentioned, agenda item number 5 is postponed till the next workshop meeting. So agenda item number 6 is a workshop to solicit comments on proposed changes to Nevada Administrative Code 388D regarding assessments. And with that, I would invite Administrator Zutz and Mr. Pacheco to the table to explain the proposed changes related to assessments that must be administered to students in private schools receiving public funding under the Nevada Educational Choice Scholarship. Administrator Zutz.
Thank you. Peter Zutz for the record, Office of Assessment Data and Accountability Management. The proposed changes relate to assessments that must be administered to students in private schools receiving public funding under the Nevada Education Choice Scholarship. The proposed language for NAC 388D to be determined for all assessments administered by private schools pursuant to NRS 388A.518 Such assessments must be administered in adherence with state laws and policies pertaining to state and federal accountability assessments, including but not limited to, and this is quite a long list, so I'm not going to read it. It is in the information packet. I'll give the high-level assessment names for English language proficiency assessments, for college career readiness assessments, for criterion referenced assessments in mathematics, English language arts and science, for alternate assessments for severely disabled students in mathematics, English language arts and science. And for all the assessments listed above, it's important to mention that all private schools who administer state assessments published to meet the requirements of NRS 39610, 388-406, 398-10 are subject to on-site administration monitoring by the Nevada Department of Education and subject to the reporting of assessment irregularities. Thank you.
Thank you, Administrator Zutz. Don't have any questions. I'm going to open up public comment here in Las Vegas. Any public comment on agenda item number 6, the changes to Administrative Code 388D affecting private schools that receive public funding under the Nevada Educational Choice Scholarship? Seeing none here. Any public comment in Carson City on agenda item number 6?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Any written comments submitted online for agenda item number 6?
Not at this time.
Thank you. It is 9:23. We will close agenda item number 6. It is still 9:23, and I will open agenda item number 7, the workshop to solicit comments on proposed changes to NAC 390 regarding assessments. Again, invite Director Zutz and Mr. Pacheco to the table to discuss the proposed changes related to the time used for administering and preparing for assessments.
Thank you. Peter Zutz for the record. The proposed changes relate to the time used for administering and preparing for assessments. The requested changes for NAC 390 adhere to the recently passed legislation legislative session of 2025. Chapter 390 of NAC then is hereby amended by adding a new section to read as follows. The Board of Trustees of each school district and the governing body of each charter school shall ensure that unless the state board has approved a waiver pursuant to subsection 2 of NRS 39805, subsection A, the total number of minutes spent during a school year conducting examinations or assessments of pupils enrolled in the school district or charter school, as applicable, does not exceed 2% of the total number of minutes of instructional time during the school year. Subsection B, the number of examinations and assessments administered in a school year to a pupil enrolled in the school district or charter school, as applicable, does not exceed a total of 5. The remainder of the requested changes are in the regulations packet. So that's all we wanted to share today. Thank you.
Thank you, Administrator Zutz. Just for clarification purposes, the 2% limitation on time, can you just, for the record, say which examinations are included or excluded from that 2% calculation?
Yeah, I'll repeat the language and answer the question. The total number of minutes spent during a school year conducting examinations or assessments of pupils enrolled in the school district or charter school, as applicable, does not exceed 2% of the total number of minutes of instructional time during the school year. This is the entire number. It's the district administered assessments For example, we have some districts currently administering iReady, and some other district-specific assessments. It
Thank
does
you,
not-
administrators. Yep. Thank you, Steve Cambro. And just correct me if I'm wrong, this does not apply to the statewide, those assessments that are required under the statewide system of accountability.
Correct. JCT, no. That's 4.5 hours, yeah.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you for the language and comment. I'll now open up the period of public comment for agenda item number 7 under these proposed changes regarding time used for administering and preparing for examinations. I'll begin here in Las Vegas. Is there any public comment on this item, agenda item number 7? Seeing none. Any public comment in Carson City? Yes.
Hi,
Go
Sue
ahead.
Jensen, Douglas County trustee again. So I'm to understand that the 2% of the time allowed for tests during the school year will exclude tests like SATs and ACT tests and include the ones taken basically in the classroom like SBAC, math testing. Want to add to that?
Yeah, if I may, interim superintendent
Steve
Canavero.
Cambro, yes, if you wouldn't mind just identifying yourself and Administrator Zutz, and if you wouldn't mind responding. Thank you.
Apologies, Peter Zutz, Department of Education. I wanted to comment on the public comment that mentioned SAT. SAT is not a state administered assessment and so would fall into this 2% cap. To be clear, we've used terms federal accountability assessments, we've used criterion reference assessments, we've used English learner assessments. Those are all considered state accountability assessments. Any assessment not part of the state's assessment system, such as the SAT that a district may choose to administer, would be included in that 2% total. Thank you.
Any further public comment in Carson City?
I think we're set. Thank you.
Seeing none. Any public comment submitted online for agenda item number 7?
Not at this time.
Thank you very much. It is 9:28, and I will close the workshop to solicit comments on proposed regulations to NAC 390 related to time used for administering and preparing for assessments under agenda item number 7. It is 9:29, and I'd like to open agenda item number 8, the workshop to solicit comments on proposed changes to NAC 387 regarding school calendars and instructional time. I'd invite Director Thibault to discuss the proposed changes related to school calendars and instructional time.
Good morning, Amelia Thibault for the record. Today, I want to set the context that a number of the regulations or regulatory changes that you see enclosed within this particular regulation were contemplated as a part of the Calendar Credit and Instructional Time Collaborative that met from fall of 2023 to the spring of 2024. We then submitted a very large regulation packet in July of 2024 that was some 30 to 40 pages of regulatory changes. That was put on pause by LCB as we moved into the legislative session. And as we have returned to these regulations to continue their progress, due to the scope of changes, we actually pulled pieces out of that 30 to 40 page set of regulations that was contemplated with the collaborative, just to make each piece more distinct and clear. So this is language that was reviewed, as I said, 23-24 with a number of school districts and charter schools, but has been pulled out. So this language includes defining a minimum daily period as a minimum required number of qualifying instructional minutes for a school day in session, as defined ultimately in NAC 387-131. We also define instructional minutes, specifically defining what does not qualify as instructional time, which includes lunch or nutrition breaks, open or unassigned periods, sport team or club activities, and study halls that do not provide at least tier 1 instruction or high impact tutoring. We also added as a piece of compliance pursuant to SB 460, sections 33 and 34, I believe, regarding the use of time for assessments, which Administrator Zutz also just covered. For this purpose, we defined that for the purposes of complying with NRS 39805 and section 34 of SB 460, the total number of annual minutes of attendance required for a pupil refers to the minimum daily period defined in NAC 387, which we just discussed. We do then have a few cleanup pieces regarding 387080, which is the school calendar, specifically just further defining what needs to go into a school calendar for the purposes of verification. These are currently already collected. We're just aligning the NAC with current policy and expectations. 387120 expands it to clarify not just school districts, but also charter schools and university schools for profoundly gifted students. These are again currently collected and validated, but was not clear in the NAC that these requirements met those those charter schools and university schools as well. We then have some cleanup language, which is going to be specific to alignment with a number of programs that we offer. So adult high school programs, alternative programs, programs of distance education, programs of personalized competency-based education, independent study, or a program of innovation, along with a program of instruction in a juvenile detention facility or treatment facility. Again, this is largely aligning language to make sure that we are covering all of our programs, which was part of a larger initiative that you'll see in a regulation shortly to clean up NAC 387, 388, 389, and 390 to have conforming language and systems of application. 387.125 removed a section of language that was causing some. Oh, nope, 387.125, I apologize. We're actually removing the alternative calendar report. The alternative calendar report was initially introduced when the alternative calendar as a concept was introduced. What we found as the years have gone on, initially alternative calendars were only for very specifically sized school districts. In 2021, that legislation was changed to open it to large school districts as well. And as we've seen over the past several years of implementation with the option for an alternative calendar, more and more of our districts and charter schools are choosing that option. Given that and the reporting that we've previously done on alternative calendars, whose purpose was to demonstrate whether or not there was value in utilizing an alternative calendar, I think we've now demonstrated the value. We've seen widespread adoption. To that end, the report on the alternative calendar is no longer necessary for demonstrating that information, and the majority of information is already collected up front when we review and approve an alternative calendar. So we're just kind of removing a piece of no longer necessary and somewhat burdensome reporting. There's also some cleanup in 387.140 regarding short school day and session. Again, clarifying language and removing duplicative or confusing language. And I will leave that there. So those are kind of a summary of the changes that we're making regarding school calendars and instructional time. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve Cambro. For the record, you covered quite a bit. There's a lot of detail there. In your opinion, or perhaps is it your intention, if these regulations were to move through, does this streamline the process for districts?
Amelia Thibault, for the record, I would say yes. I think that it more clearly aligns NAC with our current processes. I think it gets rid of some older, clunkier language that at times can be confusing. I think that the effort is to streamline the language to align it to current practice. and to make it as efficient as possible and remove some pieces that are no longer necessary.
Thank you. Steve Kimbrough, one final question. I tried to keep track of it as you were working through. I think you had mentioned that this eliminates particular reports or consolidates reports. Can you maybe just share at a high level, if not how many, but just the intention there behind elimination of reports?
Yes. So there have been efforts, sorry, Millie Tebow for the record. There have been efforts over the last few years to identify reports that NDE is collecting, how those reports are being utilized, and the burden they have on school districts. We identified the alternative school calendar report under NAC 387-125 as a report that was really no longer serving a particular purpose. This is a report that gets submitted in December of each year for the previous school year, and really provides a great deal of justification and information about outcomes regarding the use of an alternative calendar, which was really oriented toward trying to identify and gather further data as to whether or not we wanted to have a more widespread implementation or opportunity for school calendars. With the way the legislation has rolled since that time, as well as the adoption and use that we've seen during the school calendar approval process each year, we can safely say that this is now a duplicative report that is not necessarily resulting in any particular outcome. So we're looking to remove it to reduce burden on school districts.
Thank you. With that, I will open up the period of public comment to solicit comments on the proposed changes, the suggested proposed changes to NAC 387 related to school calendars and instructional time. We'll begin here in Las Vegas. Is there any public comment on agenda item number 8? Seeing none. Any public comment there in Carson City?
Not at this time, thank you.
Excellent. Any public comment for agenda item 8 submitted online?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Time is 9:38, and I will close the workshop to solicit comments on 387, the proposed changes related to school calendars and instructional time. It is still 9:38, and I am still Steve Canavero, and I will open agenda item number 9, the workshop to solicit comments on proposed changes to 387, 388, and 389 regarding personalized competency-based education. Director Tebow, please explain the changes related to the program of personalized competency-based education.
Thank you, Amelia Tebow for the record. The language enclosed here is reflective of, again, work that was done with the Calendar Credit Instructional Time Collaborative from 23-24. This language essentially sets out to look at personalized competency-based education in alignment with the Portrait of a Learner and the work that's been done over the last several years towards orienting our system to have the option for personalized competency-based education. What we contemplated with the collaborative was essentially setting it up much like an application for a program of distance education, a program of alternative education. So this would be essentially something that a school district would submit. It can be done on an individual school basis, but the school district would first have to approve it, then submit that application to the department, who would then review the application, approve it, and much like a program of distance or alternative ed, that would run at this juncture largely independently. I'll go over a few of the main concepts. Much of this is new language. NAC 387, pupil enrolled in a program of personalized competency-based education. This section specifically addresses how we would take a student to be enrolled full-time for the purposes of per pupil apportionment. We have similar language that this was modeled off of, specific to distance education programs. This does depend on whether the student is in kindergarten through 6th grade versus grades 7 through 12, acknowledging that there are different flexibilities to be had depending on the level of the student. But for kindergarten through sixth grade, a student is either enrolled in the minimum daily period, or, yes, and a program that demonstrates competency in the state instructional content standards equivalent to the regular school curriculum. For students who were in grades 7 through 12, their enrollment would only need to be in the number of courses required for full-time pupils, not the minimum daily period. This removes the seat time requirement, essentially, and requires that the student have a written plan prepared in collaboration with the student, which demonstrates that the pupil will complete sufficient coursework during the school year toward the number of courses required for full-time pupils in a program that demonstrates competency in the state instructional content standards equivalent to the regular curriculum. So this is really for the purposes of if a student is taking one course at a time, and that's how they're going to thrive, they have the option to do so. As long as we ultimately see a plan that shows that they will be enrolled or completing coursework equivalent to full-time enrollment, they can do that coursework in whatever order or workload is necessary. And of course, students may be enrolled in courses of distance ed, independent study, dual credit, credits for equivalent experience, career and technical programming, work-based learning, all of which meet requirements for full-time enrollment. Similarly, when we look at attendance in a day, if the student is in kindergarten or at any grade from grades 1 through 6 inclusive, has attended school for at least 50% of the number of minutes required for the daily session of their grade. If the student is in grades 7 through 12, this would be an or situation. So it could be that they attended school for at least 50% of the number of minutes required for the daily session of their grade. It could be that they completed hours specified in the written plan prepared in collaboration with the student, which demonstrates that the pupil will complete sufficient coursework during the school year toward the number of courses required for full-time pupils. A pupil enrolled in a program of personalized competency-based education utilizing this model of attendance must A, maintain a study log, and B, meet or otherwise communicate with a person who is licensed pursuant to Chapter 391 and is authorized by the school district or charter school for the course to discuss the pupil's progress. This model is off of distance education. Again, we were looking at replicating as much as possible established systems that are familiar to us within Nevada. Moving along, there is some cleanup to NAC 389-670, credit granted for performance on examination in lieu of course attendance. We want to ensure that students are able to continue passing courses by having a test instead and demonstrating their competency in that way. However, we wanted to clarify that if a student is going to be under a full-time program of competency-based education, not necessarily using the option to test out of a given course or move past a certain course with an exam, we would be looking to have that written plan with the student information specific to how that school or program is running a program of personalized competency-based education. We have some cleanup language. Again, this would be a new section of NAC that just says determining programs. This is responsive. At the moment, we do have personalized competency-based education happening throughout Nevada, oftentimes because we don't necessarily have the statutory or the regulatory framework to really support the innovation of some of these programs as it relates to seat time, attendance, etc. Many of these programs are currently using distance ed, right? They're using pieces of distance ed, they're using pieces of independent study. What we wanted to do is not only provide them an option to have something specific to the actual program they're running, rather than trying to take pieces and parts to try to make it work from other programs. This section really just says that as they apply for a program, we can essentially review it and then have a discussion with that school district or school to say, it's possible that what you're looking for would better fit under this program. So it's just a matter of that discussion to make sure that we're able to determine the program that best fits as we manage to clean up and align these programs. We do define a program of personalized competency-based education as a program of personalized competency-based education refers to an innovative program in effect school-wide across a grade band or within a classroom in which students receive credit and or promote to a higher grade when the pupil demonstrates mastery of a concept or skill pursuant to internal reference to new NAC. In alignment with the portrait of a learner and the academic content standards, regardless of the time, place, or pace at which the pupil progresses. We then have a new NAC specific to the application to operate a program, a personalized competency-based education, which essentially says you'll submit a plan and a request to the superintendent. It'll be reviewed. It'll be approved or denied. If it's denied, then we provide the reasoning. There is an opportunity to resubmit, essentially until we make sure that we are hitting the pieces of compliance that we need. We then have new language specific to a plan to operate a program of personalized competency-based education. This has to do with when developing a school site and a particular program for that purpose. This really just includes the personnel that we want to make sure we're involved in developing that plan. That includes educators, including any specialized educators for the program or grade level that a student might be in. So special education, for example, early childhood as applicable, things like that. An administrator assigned to the site. I'm not going to go through that whole list, but I know that it does kind of, again, we modeled it against who is often involved when we look at programs of CTE, career and technical education, to make sure that we have community engagement, stakeholder engagement, etc. And then it says a plan to operate a program of personalized competency-based education must identify how students may demonstrate mastery of a concept or skill, identify how students will be collaborated with to develop a plan for their progress toward competencies and completion of courses, identify a plan for the professional development of the school personnel supporting personalized competency-based education, identify the use of instructional time and course schedules for each grade. That allows for us to then review where we can have regulatory flexibility, etc. Identify the use of assessments, project-based learning, standards-based portfolios, other modalities for the purposes of advancing or retaining a student. Identify how special education students, English learners, students at risk, students who are gifted and talented will be supported and integrated. How social emotional learning content standards will be integrated, how students will be assessed at the beginning of each school year for the purposes of placement, identify the opportunities for Tier 2 and Tier 3 targeted interventions, and identify the primary strategies to be used in teaching. So that's essentially the questions that we would have in the application for their submission and review. We then define a standards-based portfolio as consisting of artifacts completed by students for the purposes of demonstrating competencies within a single subject in alignment with academic content standards. Almost done. We then have NAC 389, another new piece, a written plan with a pupil for a program of personalized competency-based education. And this really just outlines some of the parameters for that individual plan with that student. So, for example, whether the student plans to specific modules, right, if they think that will take them more or less time, whether they anticipate remaining or advancing in a given course, the types of artifacts the student would like to develop, the learning goals, and the learning modalities. And then finally, we do strike from the record NAC 389-829, requirements for participation in a pilot program. This piece of NAC, I believe, is left over from the 2015 or 2017 development of the option for competency-based education. We initially had a pilot program. Since that time, when this was initially written in, we have really expanded competency-based education and programs with our districts and schools. Previously, it was only if you were participating in the pilot program that you could use this particular piece of NAC. This is opening it up so that anyone who wants to participate can participate. And that concludes this particular set of regulations.
Steve Cambero, thank you, Director Thibault. Can you, I didn't quite catch it, the group, the collaborative that you've been working with to develop these regulations, do you mind saying their name again?
Yes, Amelia Thibault for the record. That was the Calendar Credit and Instructional Time Collaborative. We had, I think, 10 or 11 school districts and a dozen or so charter schools that were involved in that process. We were looking really at school calendars, the idea of flex time or seat time waivers and what that would look like for these purposes. And a lot of cleanup around our programs and how those are applied for and reviewed.
Thank you, Steve Cambro. Do you recall the conversation, and if you don't, that's okay, and how you arrived at the 50% requirement? There's a 50% requirement, I believe, for participating during the instructional minutes. The way I'm reading that is 50% of time would be spent, I'm gonna say in air quotes, in sort of a traditional setting. Do you recall the 50% and like the reason why that was arrived at?
Yes, so some of that actually mirrors existing NAC in NAC 3D7 regarding attendance of a student. I don't know the exact piece of NAC, but that NAC does say that presently for a student to be marked in attendance for the day, they must attend at least 50% of their instructional minutes. So for example, currently for a high schooler, let's say they're required to attend 330 minutes. If they're there in the morning and they have, I think, 175 minutes, right, that they attend in that morning, and then they might be out for some reason in the afternoon. The student is marked in attendance for that day, which ultimately contributes to how we do things like mark chronic absenteeism for whether a student was present or absent for the day. I can say that the conversation that we had with the collaborative, to my recollection, it was a little while ago, we really wanted to put that in place for students in kindergarten through grade 6, right? In kindergarten through grade 6, there were concerns about how self-sufficient a student could be in the time outside of seat time, the kind of individual supports that a student in K6 might need to have a teacher on hand and available to them. So there is some concept of maintaining seat time or physical attendance for students in K6 under a program competency-based ed, and for students in grade 7 through 12 to have the option to either choose to be in school for part of that time to receive supports, or for them to be working on their own time. So the seat time flexibility is largely targeted towards grades 7 through 12, but is still looking to provide a certain amount of that in-person support for grades K6. Does that answer your question?
Steve Cambro, thank you very much. One final question. To what extent has there been a conversation specific to the definition of the standards-based portfolio and the read by grade 3 requirements, given that there is essentially a pathway for students to demonstrate competency in reading outside of the assessments?
I will say that when we developed the definition of a standards-based portfolio, that was in discussion with the director of the Office of Teaching and Learning. We did have engagement with the Office of Teaching and Learning as we reviewed that definition. I don't know that I was involved in a conversation that was specific to read by grade 3 requirements. I know that there is discussion around standards-based portfolio as an alternative method of demonstrating competency, but I don't recall us mentioning read by grade 3 crossover specifically.
Steve Cambro, fantastic. If you could just flag that for, I think, future discussion, and recognizing that this predates a bit of that work as well. So as those conversations continue apace for read by grade 3, it'd be nice to have some alignment here. At least that's my impression.
That's good.
Okay, with that, I would like to open up public comment for agenda item number 9, the workshop to solicit comments on proposed changes to administer programs of personalized competency-based education will begin here in Las Vegas. Any public comment? Seeing none, we will move to Carson City. Any public comment on agenda item number 9?
Not at this time.
Moving online, any public comment submitted?
Not at this time.
Fantastic. So Steve Cambro, it is 9:55, and we will close the workshop under agenda item number 9 to solicit comments on personalized competency-based education. Moving on, it's still 9:55. Steve Canavero, agenda item number 10. I'd like to open the workshop to solicit comments on proposed changes to NAC 387, 388, and 389 regarding programs of school innovation. Again, Director Thibault, if you'd like to walk us through, walk us through some suggested changes to implement programs of school innovation.
Thank you. Maybe to both the record. So SB 460 in the 2025 session introduced the ability to pilot an innovation school. So this provided an option for large school districts to essentially have a limited number of schools. I think it was one for Clark, one for Washoe. I think it was limited to a certain number of rural schools could also choose to do this, but it was essentially developing a pilot program for an innovation school. This language was relatively open in SB 460, and so as we contemplated how we could further refine this in NAC to establish a process for reviewing and approving an innovation school application so that it could then be piloted by a school district, we again took a close look at some of the other alignment and norming language that we had done with programs of competency-based ed, distance ed, etc., to just try to keep it as consistent as possible, not necessarily recreate the wheel. So to that end, we have NAC 389, which is new, defining an innovation school. An innovation school is a school which has submitted a proposal and been approved by the department for a program of innovation within the school that seeks to implement innovative educational practices that responsibly addresses challenges specific to the school community, seeks to increase educational equity by decreasing opportunity gaps, and improve student achievement. That is mostly taken from the language around innovative schools in SB 460. We then have new language, application to operate a program of innovation and designate an innovation school, approval or denial of application, the same as a distance ed or alternative ed program. It's an application submitted to the department. We have our subject matter experts review and approve the process. And then the third piece is a plan to operate a program of innovation and designate an innovation school. It's in two parts. The first is, again, a matter of ensuring that we have the school team and the community engaged as they review what they would like to have within that innovation school. So this requires that at least 3 educators assigned to the school site, at least one of which must have a special education endorsement, be involved in the conversation. Again, if there's a GATE program, we would want to have an educator there. If it serves early education students, we'd want to make sure that there's someone there with an early education endorsement. Then we have an administrator, a representative from the school's regional professional development program, 1 specialized instructional support personnel assigned to the school site, 1 representative with subject matter expertise in providing services to students who are homeless in foster care or otherwise at risk, at least 1 parent and 1 community member. And if the school includes grades 7 through 12, at least 1 student representative, and at least 1 post-secondary representative to support college and career-ready students. So this says whatever the plan may be for the purposes of developing and designating an innovation school, that we do have the engagement from staff at the school site and within the school community in regards to that plan. And then a plan to operate a program of innovation and be designated an innovation school must, this is what would go into the application, identify the innovative practices proposed under a program of innovation and the evidence-based practices and research supporting the proposal to include an implementation plan and measures of progress monitoring, identifying supports for school personnel in implementing a program of innovation, identify the use of instructional time and course schedules, identify a plan for family and student engagement regarding the program of innovation, and identifying how special education students, English learners, students who have been identified as at risk of not graduating or dropping out of school, and students identified as gifted and talented shall be supported under the proposed program of innovation. This is a relatively open application. There isn't a great deal in statute regarding exactly what they mean by innovation. So to that end, we're really asking that the conversation take place. And that whatever those innovative practices are that they wish to propose, we ensure evidence-based and that there's a plan of support for implementation and a certain amount of monitoring to ensure that we are able to track whether or not that innovation is seeing results or not. And that concludes the proposed language around an innovation school.
Thank you, Director Steve Canterbury. Appreciate that. I'm trying to recall the originating statute to answer the question, and the extent to which you know this. What do I get? The ultimate question here, I guess, is what relief do I obtain as an innovation school? Meaning, do I still have to adhere to all of the existing statutes or is there a way in this innovation setting through this plan to propose specific relief from? Because I'm assuming that, many schools would enjoy doing innovative practices, but may run up against a particular statutory requirement. I'm just curious if you recall, I don't recall offhand, anything in law that allows us by regulation to extend some additional flexibilities to innovation schools.
I'm going to go off the record. I believe there is some flexibility that we can review certain waivers, but I'll be honest, I don't recall exactly to what extent that is. And so I would anticipate that would take place as we reviewed applications and identified where the relief is being requested. And I can also do further review of the statute in SB 460 regarding what those flexibilities entail.
Steve Canterbury, that would be great. I understand that it's not our authority to waive legislative requirements, but I do think this would set up a very interesting, maybe there's a request in the regulation for specific rules or NRS that they seek relief from in order to implement their program of innovation. Even if it's not possible, at least it provides us with a pretty good running start to identify where those barriers are for our school districts or school leaders who wish for an innovative program at their site.
I'll mark that down. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to some Steve Canterbury, public comment. I'd like to open up public comment for agenda item number 10, where we're soliciting feedback on proposed changes regarding the implementation of a school innovation plan. Any public comment here in Las Vegas? Seeing none. Any public comment in Carson City? And seeing we have one.
Yes.
Susan Jansen, Douglas County School District Trustee. Again, I love the idea of innovation and that all the stakeholders are involved. But again, I heard the word equity and I'm always concerned that that there's not DEI involved in this because we don't want to lose our funding.
If I may, I'm going to go for the record. I do believe that language is specifically from the bill, which I'm trying to find at the moment. So I believe, though, that the language is specific to trying to close opportunity gaps, which is still to my understanding, federally designated effort under Title I, and how we potentially designate certain schools or are able to identify whether or not we might be able to transition those schools. So I do believe that for these purposes, we are looking at educational equity and the closing of opportunity gaps in the same light that is still federally defined. So I'm hoping that we're secure there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the comment, Steve Canterbury. I would concur. I think here we're, I appreciate the notion and I appreciate the sensitivity. And here I do, as before, think we're under the early childhood programs. I think we're completely okay. Any public comment, any further public comment in Carson City before we move to online? Seeing none. Any public comment submitted online?
We have none at this time.
Thank you. It is 10:05. And I will close the workshop, agenda item number 10 regarding programs of school innovation. Bless you. I will, it's Steve Canavero for the record. It is 10:05 still, and I'd like to open agenda item number 11. It is a workshop to solicit comments on proposed changes regarding cleanup, alignment, and clarity. Again, back to you, Director Tebow, on the proposed changes around alignment, clarity across regulations, and I really appreciate this effort. So thank you for this cleanup language. And if you want to go ahead and just at a high level walk us through what you intend to do here, that'd be great.
Thank you. Amelia Tebow for the record. Yes, this is quite long, so I will not be reading through each item, but giving a higher level overview. During our work with the Calendar Credit and Instructional Time Collaborative, we did identify several areas that throughout 387, 388, 389, and 390, we wanted to make sure that we had the same definitions in each chapter, that we had mirroring language, right? If it was essentially requiring the same essential thing, instead of phrasing it three slightly different ways, we wanted to phrase it the same way consistently. And we wanted to make sure that as we had made updates, that really we were just ensuring a continuity in terms of department requirements, application processes, and the language in use. So this was quite an extensive effort to try to review all of our existing NAC in those chapters and try to make sure that they were as aligned and consistent as possible. So this does include certain areas where districts specifically asked for clarification. So NAC 387.345 is one piece where we were asked to provide specific clarity regarding the enrollment of students in a certain number of courses, what that looked like in terms of ensuring that the student was appropriately enrolled for apportionment purposes. So this was discussed, and I believe this does reflect the clarity and consensus that we gained with that collaborative regarding this definition. We had great discussion around programs of distance education and making sure that those requirements were clear and kind of up to date. Again, some of this language was older from when programs of distance education were potentially done by correspondence rather than what we have now post the pandemic, where students are largely connected and our systems of distance education have evolved significantly. So cleanup processes there. We wanted to make sure that programs of independent study, again, were aligned with other processes. We did make an update in NAC 388.825 when looking at programs of distance education. Previously, contact with an educator is once a week. We did shift that to 3 times a week. Again, that is largely an update responsive to students being connected and online in a program of distance education, rather than working on potentially a program of written correspondence. Again, cleanup regarding programs of distance education application processes. I'm not going to go through everyone. We also had some clarification regarding when credit may be granted in fractional time units. We wanted to make sure that there was some flexibility there if a student is in a program of innovation or competency-based education. Credit for equivalent experience outside of a campus or program, again, making sure that we had the flexibility we needed there. Some of this is just allowing for other types of programs that we're introducing, norming definitions of semester, giving flexibility for competency-based education around a unit of credit. We have a little bit of cleanup regarding the uniform system of budgeting and accounting. This is now referred to as the NDE chart of accounts. This is required both federally and statewide. So there's some cleanup here to clarify that system. We have some cleanup around children detained in detention facilities. Again, just to make sure that the process is consistent and clear and using up-to-date language. Some of these had not been updated since 1999, and there's just been an evolution in terms of processes. We had some cleanup around adult high school programs. We did remove NAC 3D7293 pupil instructed through correspondence by a licensed teacher. Again, we have moved to different methods for this process. And I'm going to say the last piece is actually the reduction of a report. So NAC 3D7501 is our annual school facilities report. This is a report submitted by all of our school districts to NDE regarding the quality of their physical school buildings. So if they're having issues with ventilation, if they're having issues with mold or walls breaking down or whatever it is, this is about the physical condition of the school. Previously, this was an annual report on August 1st of each year. In conversation with our school districts, we've identified that this could be a biannual report in that it is done every odd numbered year. This allows us, for example, in 2025 to collect the information, and that information to potentially serve and support the development of BDR budget requests in 2026 for the purposes of the 27 session. So trying to make sure that the reports that we are collecting are meaningful, responsive, and really have a plan for what we're going to do with that information in order to try to serve school districts the best as possible and just reduce burden where we can. And that concludes a high-level overview of the cleanup changes made under this regulation.
Steve Camero, thank you. Thank you very much. Incredibly important work. Maybe not the highest profile work, but in very, very, very important. All the time on reports or submissions is less time for our administrators and teachers doing the hard work. So I appreciate you aligning for clarity and reducing for actionable reporting. It is 10:12. I'm gonna open up the period of public comment for agenda item number 11 regarding proposed changes for cleanup, alignment, and clarity in regulations. Any public comment here in Las Vegas? Surprised not everyone's rushing up here to pat us on the back for all this cleanup work. Okay. Any public comment there in Carson City for agenda item number 11?
Not at this time.
Any public comment submitted online?
We have no written public comment at this time.
Okay, Steve Canavero, it is 10:13, and I will close agenda item number 11. And at the same time, 10:13, open agenda item number 12, which is a workshop to solicit comments on changes to eliminate statutory and regulatory reports. Back to you, Director.
Thank you, Amelia Tebow, for the record. SB 460, Section 1.7, essentially established a process by which school level personnel, district personnel, could submit a request first to their district, and then once the district had reviewed and approved the request, on to the Department of Education, request that whether statutory or regulatory report be removed. So it's a petition to remove and reduce the burden of reporting on school districts, school personnel, etc. A great deal of information about this process is provided in SB 460, so there's only a certain amount of regulatory language that we need to provide some clarifications. Our proposal is the following. 1, the department shall evaluate all petitions submitted to the department pursuant to publicly available rubrics, and all determinations will be supported by evaluation scores. The department shall promulgate a model rubric for use by the superintendent of schools, charter sponsor, or governing body of a university school for profoundly gifted students when evaluating individual petitions. So when we are evaluating something that's been requested to be removed, we need to have an established process in order to approve or deny the report and determine whether or not there is remaining value in the report or if the burden outweighs that value. The department shall establish a single file specification for use by school and local education agency personnel to submit their petition to their school district and or board of trustees for review by the superintendent of schools, charter sponsor, or governing body of a university school for profoundly gifted pupils. Submissions to the department shall adhere to a single file specification. Petitions may be submitted by school level personnel, including but not limited to educators, administrators, and specialized instructional support personnel, personnel supporting charter management or educational management organization, and local education agency personnel to include but not limited to district and charter sponsor administrators. Petitions should only be submitted to the department if the reporting requirement is within the jurisdiction of the department. That is an important clarification. If it is a federal report, there's very little we can do. If it is a report that is due to taxation or required under a different piece of NRS that is not under the jurisdiction of NDE, there is very little that we can do. So just making sure that that clarification is present. And then the department shall promulgate a comprehensive list of reporting requirements under the jurisdiction of the department to support the evaluation of petition of reporting requirements. And that concludes the regulatory language we have proposed regarding this process.
Thank you, Director Steve Cambro. Will you remind me if a petition for relief from a particular report is submitted to the superintendent and then denied at the superintendent, not the state superintendent of public instruction, but the superintendent of the school district, and is denied there? Do we know, will we receive a copy of that so that we know A, what was requested, and B, why it was denied?
I believe so, yes. And I believe that's part of why we're looking to have that single file specification, not just for ease of use when it moves up through the school district to NDE, but we do have legislative reporting on the number of requests and on which reports. I do believe this requires transparency for the department to know the requests that went to a district and may have been approved or denied from there, so that we're able to report to the legislature what the outcomes and efforts under this statute would be.
Thank you. I would offer that and I'll say why. I earlier under a prior agenda item, you had mentioned that to ensure that the report that was submitted to the department was for use, was not just for filing, and was actionable. And I would suggest that if the department understands the full landscape of requests for relief from particular reports, even those that are denied at the district level, it does give us a much better view of the universe of reports that our educators or district leaders are requesting relief from, that we would not see if they were denied at the district level. And we would have a better view of let's say the ecosystem of the reports, and then which reports from the field they're suggesting relief from. So I'd offer that.
Thank you. I have that in my notes.
I think it's a very interesting provision in 460, and one which could provide, I think, a very appropriate review of our time and our efficiency. And certainly, I think, hopefully you've heard in the prior agenda items that the director has mentioned, as well as others, that our intention is to streamline, synthesize, and in many ways, if it's federal taxation or outside of our control, or even if it's required by the law, a provision, a recommendation for relief may get denied, and we may cite the statute, but that gives us a data point to have a conversation about the value of a report, and then we can go back to the legislature and make some requests. So I appreciate this regulation. It's brevity, but I think it's meaningfulness as well. With that, I will open up a period of public comment under agenda item number 12, where we solicit some comments on some proposed changes for statutory and regulatory report relief. We'll begin here in Las Vegas. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none. Carson City, public comment?
Not at this time.
Seeing none. Online, public comment?
We have no public comment online at this time.
Okay, that's the theme. It is 10:20. Steve Cambro, and I will close agenda item number 12. And at the same time, 10:20, open agenda item 13. The workshop to solicit comments on proposed changes regarding open enrollment and transportation services Director Thibault, if you could walk through some of the proposed changes, and really grateful for Washoe County School District and Clark County School District. We had a chance to really engage with their team and teams, and really appreciate the comments and the discussion over the past few weeks to arrive at some language here around systems of open enrollment and transportation services. Our first crack at this to move the open enrollment system forward should be active next year. So, Director, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Amelia Thibault, for the record. So again, we had Assembly Bill 533, which outlined programs of open enrollment and really a statewide system of open enrollment. We also had in SB 460, $7 million in transportation funding for school year 26-27 in support of systems of open enrollment. So these regulations are responsive to both of those requirements between the two bills. So really briefly, obviously we have review and approval of programs of open enrollment. The department shall review via a rubric that will be publicly available the policies and procedures required in AB 533, responsive and specific to programs of open enrollment. Once we have reviewed and approved such an application, that does not need to be done on an annual basis. It would only be if there are changes to the policies and procedures or the application to that effect. We are required to have prioritization of students under a system of open enrollment. For these purposes specific to the bill explicitly states that priority must be given to students that live in the zone of attendance of a 1- or 2-star school. To that effect, that would be our first priority. After that, any other preference or priority as established by the district. So for example, if they're using a lottery system and they have certain weights associated with certain students, with siblings, and other such pieces, they are able to provide those weights with flexibility of their own choice. Determining capacity, for the purposes of calculating school capacity, districts must assess the total number of instructional teaching stations at the school site and the total number of seats available per instructional teaching station pursuant to building occupancy with consideration of the student-teacher ratio for the course, dependent upon grade level, subject matter, and the support of instructional aides and instructional support personnel. We do define a teaching station as a distinct location designed for a group of students to engage in a specific learning task facilitated by a teacher or instructional support personnel. These efforts here, again, were done with districts to try to make sure that we had as much capacity as possible while still being feasible. We then have language responsive to the award and prioritization of grant funding specific to transportation, the $7 million that were allocated for this purpose. So in this case, each district supported by a grant awarded pursuant to this section must responsive to a family engagement service regarding the transportation mechanism that would best serve families. Sorry, I realized that didn't read the most clearly, but essentially engage in a family engagement survey to see what families are most requesting that would most serve those families in terms of getting transportation for their students. And then to that end, they may enter into agreements with transportation providers to provide services to students. They can develop a community program to provide transportation, and they can create a system of individual reimbursement to families. So 3 different categories. They can choose all 3. They can choose one, whatever is best going to serve those students. And then, of course, they have to develop a mechanism for families to apply for transportation and have an approved system of open enrollment in place. A district, in order to receive a grant for this funding, the department must review and approve the application. This is standard language that we have for our other grants, so that it includes an implementation plan that's financially sound, is responsive to the needs identified by families, and providing the broadest system of supports feasible, and includes a count of students estimated to request transportation services and an estimated cost per student for the provision of such services. This process for the grant will be a little bit of back and forth because we'll need the total number of students that you anticipate and your approximate cost for those students because of course we want to make sure that we are still allocating a meaningful amount per student. So much like I believe we discussed the process that we had for oh my goodness, high need education funding that we did 398. Never mind. There will be an ongoing conversation as we try to work through those things. And high need schools. Yes, thank you. Sorry. Just as we did for the process with AB 398 for high need schools. Yes, need to fill. Okay. Sorry, I apologize. I've been talking a long time. And then, of course, there is a requirement within both bills that it includes a prioritization of students. Ultimately, it will include the count of students in each tier of eligibility priority as follows. Students that live in the zone of attendance of a 1 or 2 star school and are direct certified, free and reduced price lunch, homeless, migrant, or foster care. Students that live in the zone of attendance of a public school, regardless of star rating, who are direct certified, free and reduced price lunch, homeless, migrant, or foster care. A student that lives in the zone of attendance of a 1 or 2 star school that is designated free and reduced price lunch. A student that lives in the zone of attendance of a public school, regardless of star rating, that is designated free and reduced price lunch, and as funding is available, any other students. And that is the conclusion of those proposed regulations.
Thank you, Steve Cambro. And just as a reminder for folks in terms of how the workshop language goes, we get the comments and input here, further develop the regulatory language that you see in front of you or online. And then that language is submitted to LCB for formal drafting, and there might be questions there. And the only reason why I bring that up is the term of art, the teaching station that we developed and defined here to try to solve some of the capacity determination math, if you will, for districts specific to, this was the solution specific to larger spaces that would otherwise be disqualified for consideration in capacity determinations, which felt like everybody to be, at least those that we spoke with, felt like would limit the existing capacity determinations that districts are currently using. So the way of treating those larger spaces was the creation of a teaching station and the definition of a teaching station. So we will see how LCB responds to that, but that was, I think, a creative and thoughtful approach to answering a question. Okay, with that, I will open the period of public comment on the proposed changes to 388 regarding open enrollment and transportation services. We will begin in Las Vegas. Is there any public comment in Las Vegas? I do see one. Come on up, hit the button. You're live.
Right. Good morning. My name is Gia Moore. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of College and Career Readiness and School Choice for the Clark County School District. CCSD strongly supports the principle of school choice. Every family, regardless of zip code, deserves access to high quality options that meet their child's unique needs. We are so grateful to the Nevada Department of Education for its partnership in refining the implementation of AB 533. And we share the same goal of ensuring that this bill will be implemented with fidelity and fairness statewide. To that end, we would like to offer some points of clarification and some suggested approaches. When determining school capacity, it's essential to recognize that every school building is unique, with distinct layouts, instructional models, and facility limitations. A flexible approach should guide capacity determinations to reflect how each campus actually uses its instructional spaces. While areas such as gymnasiums, auxiliary gyms, etc. may not function as traditional classrooms, they serve critical instructional purposes and should be considered within each school's context. Excluding these spaces could understate a school's true instructional capacity. For example, excluding a gymnasium could reduce instructional capacity by as many as 300 students for high schools on average. We do, however, recommend excluding portable classrooms from calculation. Capacity should reflect the number of permanently constructed instructional spaces, not temporary facilities, so that we do not inadvertently make portables a long-term substitute for new construction. We support providing priority to students from 1 and 2 star schools through a suggested weighted lottery system, and thank you for the flexibility in that. We also seek clarification on how transportation funds will be administered and what criteria will determine eligibility. The costs of transportation are significant, and practical solutions, especially for our youngest students, are critical to ensuring that access truly means access. We also appreciate the flexibility there as well. And in closing, we're already implementing the majority of requirements for AB 533 this school year, a full year ahead of the implementation, and have updated a related CCSD policy and regulation to support this work. Our kind ask is clarification on the areas that I've outlined, and we just really appreciate the continued collaboration. Very appreciative of that, and so thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Just really quickly, just to make sure I captured the areas, and if you have written comments, then you can submit those too. That'd be helpful. The one that I took note on was the portable classrooms, so non-permanent facilities being excluded from the algorithm that determines school capacity. Is that accurate?
That's correct, Superintendent.
And the comments related to the space, the gymnasium, do you feel like the teaching station, the solution in here, sufficiently kind of resolves that?
Thank you for the question, Superintendent Canterbury. I think for the most part that it does. I think, as part of my comments is just the flexibility in that, because each campus is used differently. So for example, a lab may be used by multiple classrooms, not necessarily like a traditional classroom. So just keeping that in mind, that a lab may, house students, but multiple students throughout the day.
Thank you. Makes sense. And I mean, this is where it always gets, we all share the intention, as you had mentioned, share that intention completely. And then we've got to like get down and be responsive to the law and create these guardrails. So I do understand that. And I appreciate the need for oftentimes a determining of capacity to be very school specific, as you all do already, I think, in Clark. Yeah. The other question I had, I think you had, the other one was related to lottery. Was that right?
That's correct.
Do you mind restating that one again?
Sure. So we are in support. We believe that a weighted lottery system, we believe in the support of allowing students preference that attend 1 and 2 star schools. I think we're in agreement with that. I think, though, part of our effort within the last few years or so has been to keep families together. So allowing also a sibling priority is important to us. So just the flexibility in how we weight those systems would be appreciative.
Thank you. And then the other one feels to me like a total known entity, which is the transportation funding, which we know is going to require some further discussion and some further detail. Was that accurate to capture the three?
That's correct, Superintendent.
Thank you very much, Ms. Moore.
All right.
Really appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
Any other public comment here in Las Vegas? Seeing none. Any public comment there in Carson City on agenda item number 13? Lucky 13. Look at that.
Yes, this is Christy McGill, Deputy Superintendent, Educator Effectiveness and Family Engagement. Just a quick comment. I want to make sure that the options for the transportation funds are reviewed by the transportation directors in the state for several reasons. They are experts in regulation and law. And there's an overlap between education, NDOT, and DPS. This is very old law with a lot of logistics So we may have to clean up some of that to allow for some transportation flexibility, but just want to make sure that we do a good job engaging in our transportation directors. And there's laws outside of education that impact transportation.
Good catch. Health and safety, principal concern. Good catch. Any other public comment, Steve Cambero, any other public comment there in Carson City
Not at this time.
at this time? Any public comment available online?
Not at this time.
Okay, it is 10:36. And I will close the workshop to solicit comments on proposed language regarding open enrollment and transportation services. Still 10:36, still Steve Canavero, and I will open up the public comment period number 2, agenda item number 14. And public comment will be taken under this agenda item on any matter within our jurisdiction, control, or advisory power of the department. No action would be taken on a matter raised under this item until the matter is included on an agenda as an item on which action may be taken. We will impose a time limit of 3 minutes should anybody wish to comment under agenda item number 14. We will begin here in Las Vegas. Any public comment in Las Vegas? Seeing none. Any public comment under public comment period number 2 there in Carson City?
Not at this time.
Any public comment online?
We have none.
Prior to adjourning, I'll just say I really appreciate everyone in attendance today. Appreciate you being here and listening. Trustee Jansen, it's really nice to have you engaged and have as a trustee in our regulatory meetings, and look forward to more engagement going forward. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
With that, agenda item 15, 10:37, this meeting is adjourned.